The Auburn Tigers are in it for the top player in the state.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We are dapping it up on this Wednesday with Montgomery radio legend Darrell, Dapprich. We'll talk about Percy Lewis. Can he reset some of the culture and trends for Auburn's offensive line, as well as the running back situation on the recruiting trail? But Darrell, you've talked to folks, I've talked to folks, we've all read similar things. Auburn's in a great spot to land the number one player in the state for the 2026 class. Anthony Jones goes by Tank Jones, top edge rusher in the entire class, according to to everybody but On3. On3 has him as the number 2 edge, but consensus top player across the board. And it seems like Auburn has made him a priority early, and they feel like they're in a really good spot with him already in the process.
Yeah, a couple of wonderful things to look at. Number one, Hugh Freeze has talked about the absolute necessity to lock down the state. So you start getting number one players in the state like Auburn did with Cam Coleman. They're in it with Offord, who is this year in 2024 number one player in the state of Alabama. I think you start to
25.
25, yeah, sorry. Mm-hmm. You really start to develop a culture of grabbing the best players in the state. It says a lot. And then second of all, with this Tank Jones kid, I mean, if you were to take an Etch-a-Sketch and said, I want to design the prototypical edge or use a 3D printer, it's this kid. I mean, the measurable 6'4", 230. And, he's probably going to grow a little bit more into that, but still, just already the measurables are there. So twitchy coming off the edge. From Mobile, St. Paul's Episcopal, as we talked before, football factory.
Sure.
I think it's one of those kids, Zach, that could come in ready to play. Obviously you get better as you get coached up and get on strength and conditioning, but I do believe he could come in and immediately be ready to play with what he has as far as intangibles. Yeah.
And obviously that's so far from now as far as when he'd enroll. It'd be for the 2026 season. But to me right now, it's about the perception of what Auburn is building as a program. And right now, the top players within the state, more of them are looking at Auburn than they are Alabama. And how much of that is what Freeze is doing? How much of that is what Alabama isn't doing as well as they typically have been for the last decade and a half? I don't know. And frankly, it doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is Hugh Freeze and this staff are taking advantage of this transitional period that's happening in Tuscaloosa. And Auburn's going to reap the benefits of that over the next few seasons.
I don't want to piggyback on what you and Charlie Five talked about yesterday, but you said the buzzword of perception. And that's why I'll bring it up and continue that conversation. Yes, when you were talking about Alvin Henderson yesterday, there are other running backs out there that are really, really good, really talented that Auburn's not going to drop down if they get from a talent standpoint. But perception is key when you're talking about losing kids in state. Once that starts to happen and it snowballs, in my opinion, we saw it with Harsin, it's very hard to regain that momentum. Now, there's things that Hugh Freeze did on the front end. So when you say, well, I don't know, is it Hugh Freeze? Yes, because he went out and he talked to the coaches, the high school coaches, and he got in their cafeterias and in their living rooms and talked to these players. He was out, visible at these schools in the state of Alabama. That's the least distance you have to travel if you're going recruiting is in your own state. You better be at the front door of these high schools. Hugh Freeze and his staff has made a commitment to do that. And I think that's where it starts. When you get the reputation of, well, that staff just never came and saw us. It's hard to overcome that, Zach. And it takes a lot of work to undo that damage, in my opinion.
Yeah, and 2026 may be far enough removed where you don't have to deal with that because these players weren't playing at the the varsity level yet, which is kind of wild to think about. But I mean, they've positioned themselves for the 2025 class. They're going to be in a prime spot to be a top 5 class when it's all said and done. But I mean, let's just dream for a second. Let's say they pull off Naeem Offord, which Once again, that's the player where Hugh Freeze went to the media that was in attendance to one of those camps and said, you can put this in your story. Hugh Freeze isn't losing this kid. It's like, well, if you're going to say that, you must feel pretty good about either what you can offer him or what you already have offered him, offered. But to me, I mean, if you get Naeem offered from Ohio State and keep him in state, I mean, holy cow, you talk about perception, Darrell. I mean, that changes everything. And from a messaging standpoint, you can say, hey, we grabbed 7 of the top 10 players in the state or 6 of the top 10, depending on what happens with, Grady and some of these other guys. But also you can say you've got the top player in the state multiple years in a row, which I think, Auburn's social media team would be all over that, as they should be. It just allows you to do so much. And that might be why Freeze thinks that it will be worth it. He feels so confident in offering, is because they're going to be able to give him whatever he wants.
Yeah, that sentence, let's dream for a moment. I know that I always tend to be a little bit conservative as to what I suspect or what I feel like a class could turn out to be. It's like you have a little bit less, as far as over-promise, over-deliver, under-promise type of scenario where
Sure.
I'd rather be pleasantly surprised. But I'm going to say this. This is the first year in a really long time where I'm allowing myself to get to that spot. I'm allowing myself to go, you know what? I feel really strongly that Auburn's going to end up with a top 4, top 3 class. And I usually don't let myself go there. But I think this staff is doing such a great job, and some of the trending and some of the things that's coming down the pike in the next 2 months. And it starts with the state of Alabama. But I'm usually a little more pump the brakes, careful, cautious. I'm allowing myself to go places that I haven't gone in a long time with Auburn football in the way of recruiting. And I think it starts with, like we said, keeping kids in state that are very, very important and crucial. So yes, I don't, when he says things like that, I used to look at that as pie in the sky, coach speak.
Sure.
When other coaches said that, right? Well, you got to say that. I tend to believe it.
He wanted it on the record. He wanted it on the record. And I didn't think Auburn had a chance with offered, but then he says that. It's like, it makes no sense for him to say that unless he thinks there's a real shot that Auburn's going to land him.
Absolutely. You really are putting yourself out on a limb and getting yourself exposed if you say that and then it doesn't happen. So again, I am very bought in and optimistic. And I'm not saying Auburn's going to get everybody that's their top target. The key is, when you have a situation where you're in on a lot of these 5 stars and these top players, okay, let's say you're in on 10 and you miss 6 and you still get 4. Holy crap, look how that changes a class. And we started to see that last year with Coleman and Riddick and Thompson. I don't think that there's any reason why it can't continue and just keep getting better. The momentum is building is what I'm saying. Now, we've talked about proof of concept, and we talked about it last year. If you combine that with a season that Auburn gets 9 wins and start to build that along with it, then I really think the sky is the limit. I know I'm booging on this Wednesday, but it just feels like that. I sense this turning and this change of direction of this program. And it started with recruiting last year. I think we all got a little bit, disenchanted with the way things ended up on the field at the end of the year, but that has been washed away. For me, anyway. And I think that this year, proof of concept on the field is just going to build that momentum. It's going to add to it, enhance it.
They need it to. They need it to. Curious to see what happens if that proof of concept doesn't come, what kind of momentum they lose. But hopefully we don't see that. Auburn's future at running back is interesting. Like you said, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but you're high on a guy that we did mention yesterday, but maybe we should have spent more time talking about him. So that's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. eBay Motors, Darrell, you have used eBay Motors. I have used eBay Motors, but you've used them specifically to find some kind of harder to find parts for some of the larger, some of your trucks, right?
Yeah,
we have a company.
Yeah, we have a company fleet that has some delivery trucks, and one of them is a flatbed. And if anybody tries to find parts for a flatbed truck that was built, that was in the 1980s, Good luck.
Right.
And we actually did on eBay Motors because of doing this with you. I said, I'm going to give this a shot because I can't find it anywhere else. We found the part, our guy put it on, and we were back in business.
Yep. So they've got over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. They've got parts for your car. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Darrell, when you look at the running back situation for Auburn in the 2025 class, we're all assuming there's going to be 2 running backs. Is there an argument for a third running back? Possibly. And originally it seemed like Alvin Henderson was going to kind of set that pace. And now it seems like the coaching staff is giving him a chance to, but he just visited Penn State. And so we don't know what that timeline could look like. There's a name in this running back class that you might even be more excited about.
I am. So to reset, we talk about the possibility. I think taking 3 is absolutely essential. I don't even think it's an option. I think you need to take 3. So this argument of, could Auburn perhaps take 3? I think they absolutely have to take 3 because of the situation. Even if Cobb and Austin both come back, and I know Charlie 5, you mentioned about if one wins the job, the other one could leave, which is a very good point. But let's say both stay. You want 5 running backs in your running back stable, from a scholarship standpoint. So I think they take 3. Usman Kroma is absolutely, to me, the premier runner. And I love Alvin Henderson. I know he's an in-state kid. We talked about him being a smaller back, but Kroma just looks like a prototypical NFL back. Yeah. I read some of the stuff where his coach said he's the best 2-sport athlete he's ever coached, and it's not even close. He can't think of who number 2 is. His high school coach in Lee County, Georgia. Kid's a really good basketball player too. Good size. I saw 6'1", 205. That varies, but 6'1", 205 that can flat out run, just a thoroughbred type running back. I think of a prototypical NFL guy. And so I love his measurables. I love the fact that his coach is talking about how athletic he is. I'm always very high on kids that are multi-sport athletes. I'm not saying he won't commit to football 100%, but when you can play other positions at a high level and use different, skill sets, body skill sets, I'm so excited about him. If Auburn gets him, to me, he'd be right up there with anybody in that class as a crown jewel.
Yeah, I love his ability. And typically, I love larger backs. You want your running back room to have different types, and that could be kind of a weakness of Auburn's running back tandem this year, because I think Damari and Jeremiah and Jarquez, they're all similar. Jarquez is a little bit of a power runner than the other 2, but yeah, I think the other guys are kind of similar. I love the strategy, the reported strategy. They're trying to get a larger back and then kind of a smaller, faster back. And if that is Kroma and Henderson, that's probably the best case scenario for Auburn. And I think they both play really early in their time at Auburn.
And then the Ward kid from Murfreesboro that's a commitment to USC. Look, I don't care that he's a 3-star. Jarquez Hunter was a 3-star. And
Morris, right? DeJuan Morris from USC. Yeah, I
said Ward. I'm sorry. I don't know why I was thinking Morris. And it is DeJuan.
Thank you for the folks that corrected us yesterday.
He's Appreciate a USC. He's committed to USC. USC wants him. I'm pretty high on this kid too. I think even though, like I said, he's a 3-star, I like him a lot, and I think he'd be a perfect number 3 back, not number 3 along the depth, but just a third back to take in this class. And Auburn would be thrilled with that, and that would be a very, very, successful stable of running backs.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. And it kind of builds depth for the future, right? Because I think Cobb and Austin will both be here a year from now. I think that's what my gut tells me. Austin really likes it here. I think Cobb will be the starter, but I think Austin will kind of be okay, hopefully, with a similar role that he probably is going to have this season. And then you're able to kind of stack it with Kroma and Henderson. Now, do you want that 5th back? Probably. I think we're in agreement there. Is that 5th back better suited to be a transfer player or a freshman? I don't know. I think I'd rather have a portal running back as that fifth guy personally, because if you have 3 freshmen and they all stay, does that impact recruiting the following class at all when you need another running back? It could. So like, that's just kind of my gut. I don't think any of them's wrong. That's just probably what I would prefer. But still, I think you can kind of see the future of this running back room coming together.
It's a good point. I wonder how easy it would be to get a kid to get in the portal to be 3rd or 4th on the depth chart, though, where a freshman can buy.
It probably depends. Yeah, I mean, could you go get a smaller school guy, or a guy that maybe like realizes his future and isn't in the NFL, so he wants to kind of do the right move from an education standpoint? Like, there are so many running backs in the portal. You don't need to get a superstar in this situation. You just need another like experienced dude who's had, some enough carries at his previous stop. I think there's plenty of that, Darrell. And from an NIL standpoint, it might actually be cheaper too.
But this guy's going to have to understand that he's coming in probably being running back 4. I mean, with Alston,
I think that's out there.
And Chroma, I think you're saying, okay, come on, we'll get you to play big boy football in the SEC instead of Group of 5. That's the draw, and here's some more NIL money. But you could
or maybe they also can be a returner or something, and that's kind of the pitch. But all in all, like it's coming together. So they can get Chroma, and then I still think Henderson flips from Penn State. I know there are opinions all over the place, and Penn State does not think he's flipping, but I have a hard time buying it. I think he's going to be a part of this class when it's all said and done. So do you agree with that? Do you think Henderson flips?
Yes, I agree 100%. Yep.
All right. Percy Lewis, can he change up a trend that has not been good for the Tigers? I think so. We discuss in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. So yesterday, Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl, he put out a tweet and a graphic, the graphic portal prospect highlighting offensive lineman Percy Lewis. And it's a pretty long post, so I'm just going to kind of go over the first sentence because it kind of had an emotional impact. It's been 5 drafts, he says. It's been 5 drafts since Auburn football had an offensive lineman drafted, and 7 years since they've had one taken on day 2. And of course, that was Braden Smith. But those things should and could change next April with the arrival of Mississippi State behemoth transfer Percy Lewis. And he kind of breaks down Percy Lewis's game and why, at the worst case, he's a swing tackle at the NFL level. And this addition, like, we celebrated it when it happened, but if Auburn overachieves, like, Percy Lewis is going to be a part of it, Darrell.
He is. I remember when Auburn got him, there was a lot of Mississippi State people that I'm friends with that were really upset. And we immediately at 72.2 was the highest as far as pass protection in the PFF grade that Auburn's had in a while. Does he need to improve on his run blocking a little bit? I think he's like 10 points lower in that. Yes, perhaps. But I never played offensive tackle, but I've talked to people that have, and in coaches that feel like with his footwork and the way he moves his arms, it's easier to teach to adjust to or to improve from a run blocking standpoint than it is to learn how to pass block. I don't know. Like I said, I've never played offensive tackle. Mm-hmm. I don't care. If you're a left tackle and you can pass block and you have that kind of PFF grade, and if Peyton Thorne has more time this year, let's say Peyton Thorne significantly improves and has a better year. Well, a lot of people, Zach, are going to point to the receiving core got better and the offensive line got better. And it just from a little exercise I did that we'll talk about later that's coming out, it's senior laden offensive line. So I think Percy Lewis has the potential to definitely play at the next level. I think he will build on his resume this year, and it will be a lot about how improved Peyton Thorne is being protected from that, from that left tackle spot. I love the kid. I was psyched when Auburn got him in the transfer portal. And again, everyone raved about his PFF grade for pass protection. It's always good to look and see what other fan bases say when a dude leaves. Yeah. If they're genuine, if they're being honest, that they were upset and they were like, could not afford to lose Percy Lewis, and we lost him. So, Jim Nagy putting that out, talking to, he's a kid that Nagy kind of speculated, will he get a Senior Bowl invite? I believe he will. and it'll be a good situation for his stock to rise a little bit.
Oh yeah, he's the type of player that screams Senior Bowl. Like, he's not going to have a crazy amount of starts, 8 going into this year, so he'll probably have 20, 21, depending on, how things go. But he's got all the tools. Like, the NFL is going to want to see him up close and personal in Mobile. So when we go down there early next year, like, odds are Percy Lewis. I expect Percy Lewis to be down there for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and you're like me. You're an NFL guy. You have an NFL team, that you root for. You have a vested interest. So I watched the draft, and
sure,
one of the things I heard consistently, Zach, and I was pretty excited about it because we were down there, was, hey, this guy really helped himself by playing in the Senior Bowl. He went from potential fifth or sixth round pick to moving up into the second or third round because of how he showed out at Senior Bowl practices and in the game. That shows you a lot. So once you get down there, you show out, you can move 2 or 3 spots in the draft. And Lewis is exactly, like you said, that prototypical guy, the blueprint to do that. I think he'll get down there and he'll only help his stock.
Yeah. So, I think it helps the sales pitch of Hugh Freeze, because I think they're going to have to go get another tackle. Maybe not, but I do think they're going to need to kind of help get 1 or 2 guys via the portal to carry over before the offensive linemen they're recruiting are here. So I still think the stopgap is not quite filled. And you could say, hey, look, the last guy that came here to play tackle through the portal, we got him drafted. Come on, let's go. Quit thinking about it. And I think that's going to be important. I think it also will set a trend. Like, Percy Lewis will get drafted this season. And then after that, Connor Lew will get drafted the following season. Maybe Xavier Miller is part of it either year. He's draft eligible this year. We'll see what happens. Dylan Wade will be in that boat as well. It's going to be nice to see, okay, we've got a line here now of folks that are worthy of the NFL playing up front. And it's just been a minute since you've been able to kind of point at and track that and say, okay, Auburn should have an offensive lineman drafted every year for the foreseeable future.
And going way out into 3 drafts from now, you know how I feel about DeAndre Carter. I think that's a kid, maybe not right now. Looking at some of the stuff as far as who Auburn brought in, I think that Carter is a kid that will project as to be a really good offensive lineman.
Yeah, Tyler Johnson is a guy that, once he finally gets his shot next year, like he might be that. Seth Wilfred, he's got a decent frame. He's raw, coming from the JUCO ranks. A lot of folks don't know a whole lot about him. I mean, the path is there for a lot of these guys. Then obviously the current class that they're recruiting, I mean, there's a bunch of talent coming in. So, whether it's Scholl or Cardi Smith or whoever. So it's fun. It's fun. And we haven't been able to have a conversation like this in a long time, Darrell.
We haven't. And I think that just looking at how it's evolved from not only getting, you remember when, Zach, we used to be excited to get any offensive lineman, just get bodies. Ooh, we got 4 in this class. Well, now it's higher level. You're not just settling for bodies. You're getting higher rated players that are projected to play in the league at the next level. And that's how you obviously start to compete for championships.
No doubt. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Darrell, thank you so much for your time as always. How can people check out everything you've got going on?
Get me on X, DAP6410, Wednesdays and Fridays with you. And then I just dropped an article for Auburn Daily that'll be coming out soon for the way too early look at the Auburn's projected 2 deep.
Ooh, we'll probably talk more about that on Friday's show, so be sure to stick around. Like the video, please subscribe. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.